Welcome to Top 10 Emotional Comeback. I was 24 years old when my father looked me straight in the eye and told me to pack my things and get out. "You're just taking up space here, Alex," he said, his voice cold and rehearsed, like he'd been practicing those words for weeks in front of a mirror. My mother didn't even glance up from her coffee cup. She just kept stirring round and round and muttered something about me needing to grow up and take responsibility. The irony of it all? It didn't even hurt anymore. Now when my older sister, Veronica, was sitting right there at that kitchen table, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. And honestly, in a way she had, because they just handed her $1 million. $1 million in cash, transferred straight from Dad's personal account into hers. He even printed out the bank confirmation like it was some kind of trophy to hang on the wall. "We believe in you, Ronnie," he said, his face glowing with pride. "This is going to put our family name on the map." She actually giggled. She flipped her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder and kissed him on the cheek like the golden child she'd always been, always would be. Meanwhile, there I was, standing by the doorway with my half-packed duffel bag hanging off my shoulder. The air was thick with the smell of expensive espresso and pure, undiluted favoritism. I should have seen it coming. I mean, I've been watching this play out my entire life. Veronica was the golden child, the genius, the princess who could never do anything wrong. And me? I was the quiet one, the drifter, the one who didn't know what he wanted, the disappointment. She flunked out of college not once, but twice before she suddenly decided she was an entrepreneur. And somehow, that made her a visionary in their eyes. Meanwhile, I dropped out once to help pay the mortgage when Dad lost his job for 6 months. And that made me lazy. A quitter. She crashed 2 cars before she even turned 22. And each time, Dad just went out and bought her a brand new one without blinking. I worked part-time jobs, delivered groceries in the rain, saved up every penny I could just to buy a beat-up Honda Civic that coughed and wheezed every time I shifted into second gear. And still, my mom had the nerve to ask me if I really thought that was a smart investment. So when the $1 million announcement happened that morning, I wasn't even angry. I was just exhausted, bone-tired. I'd spent years, literal years, trying to earn their approval. Years listening to them brag to their friends about Veronica's latest brilliant idea while they asked me to keep my voice down whenever I tried to share something I was proud of. "What about me?" I asked quietly that morning, my voice barely above a whisper. "Am I just supposed to leave?" My father didn't even blink, didn't hesitate for a single second. "You're 24 years old, Alex. It's time to be a man. Your sister's taking real risks for her future." "What are you doing?" "Working," I said. "Saving." He laughed. Short, sharp, cruel. "Saving what? Pennies? You don't build a life on scraps, son." My mother finally looked up from her coffee. "You could learn something from your sister, Alex. She's not afraid to dream big." Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I wanted to say something, anything. I wanted to scream at them, shake them, make them see me for once. But what was the point? Every single time I tried to explain myself in the past, every time I tried to stand up for myself, it just turned into another lecture about my attitude or my lack of gratitude. So I just zipped up my bag and nodded. "All right," I said, my voice hollow. "I guess I'll figure it out." I walked out of that house with $362 in my bank account, an old Honda Civic that sounded like it was dying with every mile, and absolutely no idea what I was supposed to do next. But you know what? I also left with something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Pure, crystal clear clarity. No more pretending. No more begging for scraps of respect. No more standing in the shadow of someone who'd been handed everything while I fought for crumbs. Just me, the open road ahead, and the question of who I could become when I stopped letting them tell me I was worthless. The first few nights were brutal. I slept in my car parked by the beach because it was free, it was quiet, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore helped me think. Helped me breathe. I showered at a gym that offered a 7-day free trial, and I survived on dollar menu sandwiches and cheap coffee. But even in those dark, uncertain moments, I felt something strange. I felt free. Every single day, I worked the night shift at a distribution warehouse, loading trucks until my back ached and my hand were covered in cuts. And every single morning, I sat in my car watching the sunrise, sketching out ideas in a beat-up notebook I'd found at a thrift store. I'd always been good with computers. Ever since I was a kid, I used to fix old laptops for neighbors. I built simple websites for local shops. It was just a hobby back then, something I did for fun. But now it felt like the only thing I had, the only skill that could save me. So I started freelancing online, taking whatever tech gigs I could find, fixing broken code, designing basic landing pages, setting up e-commerce stores for small businesses. It didn't pay much at first, barely enough to keep gas in my car and food in my stomach. But slowly, painfully slowly, I started building a small client base. Meanwhile, Veronica's business was everywhere. She opened this luxury lifestyle boutique downtown, the kind of place that sold $200 candles and called them art. My parents visited every single week, bragging to anyone who would listen about how our daughter is a CEO now. She even did an interview on the local news, talking about female empowerment through fragrance or something like that. I watched that segment from the break room at work one night while eating a sad microwave burrito. My coworker, Tony, glanced up at the TV and then looked at me. "Hey, isn't that your sister?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. He whistled. "She's got that millionaire smile, huh?" "Yeah," I said again, even softer this time. I told myself I wasn't jealous. I tried so hard to believe that. But there were nights when I lay in the back seat of my car, staring up at the ceiling, wondering if maybe they were right about me. Maybe I really was the disappointment. Maybe some people were just born lucky, born to have everything handed to them on a silver platter, while others had to claw their way through life with bloody fingernails. But then I'd remember the way my father's voice had cracked when he said, "You're just taking up space." And something deep inside me hardened like stone. If they thought I was wasting space, I was going to build something so big, so undeniable, that they would choke on those words. And that's exactly what I did. But what happened next? Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw it coming. So I doubled down. I saved every single penny I earned. I taught myself new skills late into the night. And I started building something real. A software platform designed specifically for small businesses to manage their inventory more efficiently. It started as just a side project, something I tinkered with in the early mornings before my warehouse shifts. But soon, a few of my freelance clients wanted to try it out. And then they told their friends. Within a year, I had 20 paying users, then 50, then 100. I wasn't rich, not even close. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was actually going somewhere. Like I was building something that mattered. During that same time, Veronica's boutique got fancier and fancier. She hired influencers to promote her candles. She hosted champagne nights with live music. She posted motivational quotes on Instagram about hustle and ambition while wearing designer heels that probably cost more than my rent. My mom sent me every single article, every photo, every milestone. "You should be proud of your sister, Alex," she'd text me. "She's really making it happen." I never replied. Not once. Then one night, after a particularly brutal 12-hour shift at the warehouse, I got a voicemail from my dad. His voice was casual, almost friendly. "Hey, Alex," he said. "We heard you've been doing some kind of tech thing. That's great, son. Really great. But listen, your sister's expanding her business, and she needs help setting up a new website. Why don't you give her a hand? It will be good practice for you. And, family should help family." I remember staring at my phone for what felt like an eternity. The sound of distant traffic humming outside my window. The glow of street lights cutting through the darkness. Help her. The same sister who hadn't called me once since I left. Hadn't asked how I was doing. Hadn't cared if I was sleeping in my car or eating garbage. The same parents who threw me out like I was trash. I didn't call them back. But that night, something shifted inside me. Something fundamental. I wasn't that same broke kid sleeping in his car anymore. I had momentum now, and they had no idea what was coming. A few months later, my platform landed a major client. An independent retail chain signed a 6-figure contract with me. 6 figures. I quit the warehouse job that same week. I rented a small apartment, nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with actual walls and a real bed. And I officially registered my company. For the first time in my life, I had a business bank account, an office space, and a reason to wake up excited every single morning. But that's also when the calls started coming in again. From my parents, from Veronica, from relatives I hadn't heard from in literal years. At first, it was all casual and polite. Hey, how have you been? We should really catch up sometime. But beneath the surface, I could hear something else in their voices. Curiosity, maybe even a little bit of fear. And then one afternoon, my mom called out of the blue. "Alex, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Veronica's been having a bit of a tough time lately. Sales are slowing down at the boutique. We were thinking maybe you could, help her out a little. You're doing so well now, aren't you?" And just like that, the mask started to crack. The first sign that maybe, just maybe, the golden child wasn't so golden anymore. The first hint that everything she'd built with their money was starting to crumble. But I had no idea how bad it was actually going to get, how fast everything would fall apart for her, or how far my parents would go to drag me back into their mess. I didn't know that this wasn't just going to be about money anymore. It was going to be about control, about pride, and about the one thing my family never thought I'd have: power. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because what happened next changed everything. It started slowly, the way tension always builds in families like mine. Little comments, little digs, old patterns creeping back in through polite phone calls and fake smiles. For months, I'd been trying to keep my distance, to focus on growing my company, building my life. But somehow my family always found a way to pull me back in. My mother called one Sunday afternoon, right when I was preparing a huge pitch for a potential investor. "Alex, darling," she said, her tone sweet but sharp underneath. "Your sister's boutique has been struggling just a bit lately. You know how the economy is these days." I stayed quiet, waiting. "She just needs a bit of guidance, that's all," Mom continued. "You're so talented with business now. Maybe you could take a look at her website, spruce it up a little. After all, you're family." There was again that word, family. It had become their favorite weapon to use against me. "I'm pretty busy right now, Mom," I said carefully, trying to stay calm. Maybe she should hire a professional developer. There was a pause, and then that sigh, that disappointed, guilt-tripping sigh I knew all too well. "Alex, don't be difficult. She's your sister. You know she always supported you when nobody else did." I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter, hollow laugh. Supported me? She hadn't even called me once after I left home. Not once. "Mom, I don't think helping with her boutique is really—" She cut me off. "Don't be selfish, Alex. You owe this family after everything we've done for you." I hung up, just like that. For years, I'd been the one expected to apologize, to bend, to make peace, to accept that I was always less than. Not anymore. Never again. A few days later, Veronica herself called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. "Alex," she said brightly, like we were the best of friends who talked every day. "Oh my God, it's been forever. How are you?" "I'm fine," I said flatly. "So," she continued, her voice casual but calculated. "Mom probably told you already. I've been going through a tiny little business hiccup. Nothing major, just some cash flow stuff. But I figured since you're in the business world now," she said it like it was some cute hobby, "maybe you could help me out. Invest a little. Like a partnership. It would be great PR for both of us." I didn't say anything. She kept talking. I was thinking maybe 50 or 100,000, just to get through this rough season. "What do you think?" I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. "You want me to invest in your candle shop?" Her tone turned ice cold instantly. The fake friendliness vanished. "It's not a candle shop, Alex. It's a luxury lifestyle brand. And yes, I thought you want to help your own sister instead of laughing at her like some kind of jerk." "I'm not laughing at you," I said calmly. "I'm laughing at the idea that you think I'd fund the same people who kicked me out and treated me like garbage." Silence. Heavy, loaded silence. "So that's how it is," she said coldly. "You're still holding a grudge like a child." "I'm not holding anything," I said. "I just finally learned my lesson." She hung up without another word. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my office. Unannounced. Uninvited. I was in the middle of an important meeting when my receptionist knocked nervously and whispered, "There's an older couple here. They say they're your parents." My stomach dropped. When I stepped into the hallway, there they were. My dad in his usual press shirt, looking stern and entitled. My mom clutching her designer purse like it held all the moral authority in the world. Alex, Dad said, his voice low but firm. You need to stop acting like we're strangers. I blinked, trying to process the audacity. You threw me out. He waved his hand dismissively. You needed to learn responsibility. And look, it worked. You've done well for yourself. You should be thanking us. Honestly. That line almost made me choke on my own breath. Thank them? Thank them for making me sleep in my car? For years of humiliation and neglect? Before I could respond, Mom jumped in. We're not here to argue, honey. We just want you to do the right thing. Veronica's worked so incredibly hard, and she's been under so much stress lately. You're successful now. You can afford to help her. It's the right thing to do. And by help, I said slowly, you mean what exactly? Dad crossed his arms. A loan, or an investment, whatever you want to call it. You could save her business, Alex. I stared at them both, feeling something dark and heavy settle in my chest. You gave her $1 million, I said quietly. Remember? That was years ago, Mom said dismissively. Businesses take time to grow and develop. These things happen. And mine didn't get a single cent, I said. But somehow I'm the one who's supposed to bail her out now. Dad's jaw tightened. His face turned red. Don't twist this, Alex. You wouldn't even have that business if we hadn't pushed you out of the house. We made you who you are. There it was. The classic rewrite of history. Somehow, their cruelty had magically become tough love in their minds. I think we're done here, I said quietly, turning toward my office door. Mom called after me, her voice breaking. You'll regret this, Alex. Family is supposed to stand together. You'll see. But they left before I could say anything else. For a few weeks after that, I didn't hear from them. I buried myself in my work, building new partnerships, hiring 2 talented developers, expanding into international markets. But the silence didn't last. It never does with people like them. Because what they did next crossed a line I never thought they'd cross. It started with small things creeping back in. A few distant relatives suddenly checking in on me, asking how I was, and then casually steering the conversation toward Veronica's rough patch. An aunt sent me this long, emotional message about how family fortunes rise and fall together, and we all need to support each other. A cousin tagged me in one of Veronica's desperate Instagram posts with the caption, "Support small businesses, especially family." Then came the family gathering. My parents insisted I attend. It was my dad's birthday dinner, and they made it sound like skipping it would be the ultimate betrayal. It would mean so much to him, Mom said over the phone, her voice sickly sweet. And Veronica will be there too. We all need to reconnect as a family. Every single instinct in my body told me to skip it, to stay far away. But some stubborn part of me wanted to face them. Maybe I wanted to see if anything had actually changed. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need their approval anymore. The restaurant was one of those ridiculously expensive places my parents loved. White tablecloths, gold-rimmed plates, waiters who spoke in hushed whispers like they were in a library. When I walked in, the entire conversation stopped. Veronica was already sitting there in a designer dress, her hair perfectly styled, looking like she was about to walk a runway. She smiled at me like a celebrity greeting a random fan. "Alex," she said, standing up to hug me. "Look at you. You actually clean up nice when you try." "Thanks," I said dryly, taking my seat. Dad raised his wine glass dramatically. "To family," he announced loudly. "And to Veronica, who's been working tirelessly to rebuild after some unfortunate setbacks." The entire table clapped politely. I didn't. I just sat there. Veronica smirked. "It's been such a tough year, you guys. But you know me, I never give up. Some people would just quit and walk away, but that's not who I am." She glanced directly at me when she said it. I said nothing, just sipped my water and kept my face neutral. Then Dad turned his attention to me. "So, Alex, how's that little tech thing of yours going?" "Little tech thing? It's going well," I said evenly. "We're expanding into Europe next quarter." Mom smiled, but it was empty. "Hello. That's wonderful, dear. You know, you really should help your sister with some of that expansion experience. Maybe even collaborate on—" "Mom," I interrupted firmly. "Let's not do this. The entire table went dead silent. Veronica tilted her head, fake innocence all over her face. Wow, someone's a bit touchy tonight. I was just saying it would be nice to work together. Combine brains and beauty. She giggled. Dad chuckled along. She's got a point, son. You're both talented in your own ways. Imagine what you could build together. Yeah, I said, my voice calm but cold. Except one of us built something from absolutely nothing, and the other got $1 million head start and still couldn't make it work. The air went ice cold. You could have heard a pin drop. Veronica's smile froze on her face like a mask. Alex, Mom whispered sharply. That's completely uncalled for. No, I said, my voice steady. What's uncalled for is pretending none of this ever happened. Pretending you didn't throw me out. Pretending you didn't choose her over me my entire life. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. Enough. This is supposed to be a celebration, not a therapy session. Veronica leaned back in her chair, smirking again. It's fine, Dad. Some people just can't handle watching others succeed. It's called jealousy. I laughed quietly under my breath. Right, that must be it. Dinner ended early, awkwardly, painfully. On the way out, Mom grabbed my arm tightly. You embarrassed us tonight, she hissed in my ear. You think your money makes you better than this family? I looked her straight in the eye. No, Mom. You made it crystal clear years ago that I was never really part of this family to begin with. She let go without another word, her face pale. Over the next few months, things escalated fast. Veronica's boutique started posting desperate discount sales every single week. Then she turned off the comment sections on all her social media posts. Eventually, I started hearing rumors from clients, from mutual acquaintances, that she owed vendors tens of thousands of dollars. And my parents? They started calling me again. Every single day. First with guilt, then with anger, then with desperation. You're letting your sister fail, Dad said in one particularly nasty voicemail. We raised you better than this, Alex. We raised you to care about family. It would have been almost funny if it didn't sting so damn much. After everything they'd done, after years of being invisible, being dismissed, being treated like I didn't matter, they still genuinely believed I owed them something. The last straw came one afternoon when I got home from work and found an envelope taped to my apartment door. Inside was a handwritten letter from my mom. Alex, we know you're doing incredibly well now, and we're so proud of you. But Veronica is drowning. We've already mortgaged part of the house to try to help her, but it's not enough. Please, if you have any decency left in you, save your sister's dream. She's your blood. There was a check request enclosed for $250,000. I sat on my couch for a long time, holding that letter in my hands, my mind racing through every single memory, every insult, every dismissive comment, every you're not enough, every dinner where they toasted her success and ignored mine completely. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt calm, detached, like something deep inside me had finally clicked into place. They wanted to play games with guilt and manipulation? Fine, I'd play too. But this time, I wouldn't be the quiet one sitting at the table pretending not to notice the knives pointed at me. This time, I make absolutely sure they finally saw exactly who they were dealing with. And that's when I discovered something that changed everything. The unraveling began quietly, like a slow leak in a dam that nobody notices until the entire thing collapses. For weeks, I tried to ignore the warning signs. The late-night messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The vague, urgent calls from my parents. The growing sense that something was moving behind the scenes, something I couldn't quite see yet. But I didn't want to care anymore. I was busy building my life. My company had just closed another major partnership. I'd hired new staff. And for once, my life actually felt stable, peaceful. Then one morning, I got an alert from my bank. A large transfer, $15,000, had been flagged for review. My stomach dropped immediately. I hadn't authorized any transfer that week. I logged into my account right away and froze. There was, clear as day, a pending transaction from one of my business accounts being routed to an unfamiliar entity registered under my sister's name. I called the bank immediately, my hands shaking. That transfer wasn't authorized, I said quickly. I didn't make it. The rep put me on hold for what felt like forever, then came back sounding confused. Sir, the request came through a joint authorization. Someone logged in using a linked account with matching family credentials. Family credentials? My chest tightened. Yes, sir. The system shows the request was made by an account connected to your parents' banking profile. My mind raced back. Years ago, when I was younger and naive, my father had insisted on helping me manage my first savings account. He'd opened a family joint account, said it was for emergencies. I'd completely forgotten about it after I left home. I'd never used it again. But apparently, he hadn't forgotten. I immediately froze the transaction and changed every single password I could think of. While I checked my email history, there were multiple failed login attempts from unknown devices. My dad's old email was listed as one of the recovery contacts. My hands were trembling with rage. I called him immediately. He picked up on the third ring, his voice calm, casual, like nothing was wrong. Alex, you don't need to be so dramatic about this. What did you do? I demanded, my voice shaking. Why is there a transfer from my account to Veronica's name? He sighed like I was being an annoying child. We needed to move some money temporarily. Veronica's business was about to lose its lease. We'll pay it back eventually. I almost laughed in disbelief. You took money from my company without even asking me. Don't exaggerate, he snapped. It's all in the family, Alex. We've helped you plenty over the years. You owe us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You kicked me out, Dad. You threw me away like garbage. That was for your own good, he said, his tone sharp and defensive. You're successful because we pushed you. So you owe this family some gratitude. It's time you gave back. I was silent for a long, long time. Then I said quietly, almost calmly, you didn't give me anything. You gave her everything. Don't you dare talk about your sister that way, he barked. She's tried her best. She's had a hard year, and she needs help. So you stole from me. I borrowed it, he said quickly, defensively. You can't even feel it missing. You're making good money now. Don't act like this is some tragedy. My blood was boiling. You could have asked me. He laughed. Actually laughed. If I'd asked, you would have said no. And then he hung up on me. That was the exact moment something inside me broke. Not anger this time. Something deeper, colder, more permanent. An irreversible shift. I'd always known my parents favor Veronica, but I hadn't realized how far they would actually go for her. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was betrayal. Criminal betrayal. I sat at my desk for nearly an hour, staring at that frozen transfer on my screen. The betrayal wasn't really about the money itself. It was about the entitlement. The way they saw my success as theirs to take. The way they thought they could still reach in my life and take whatever they wanted just because we shared the same last name. That evening, I drove to their house. The same house I'd been thrown out of 5 years earlier. The drive felt longer than I remembered, every mile heavier. When I pulled up, Veronica's brand new SUV was parked in the driveway, gleaming under the porch lights like a trophy. Mom opened the door before I could even knock. Alex, she said sweetly, like absolutely nothing had happened. You look so tired, honey. You work too hard. I didn't respond. Where's Dad? She hesitated, her smile faltering slightly. In the living room. But sweetheart, can't we just... I'm not here to chat, Mom. Her smile died completely, and I walked past her into the house. Dad was watching TV. Veronica was sitting on the couch beside him, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. When she saw me, she smirked. Well, the prodigal son returns. Did you do it? I asked directly, staring at her. She blinked innocently. Do what? Authorize a transfer from my company account. Her smirk vanished instantly. She glanced nervously at Dad, then back at me. Oh, relax. It was just temporary. No big deal. I stared at her in disbelief. You did do it. She rolled her eyes dramatically. Dad said it would be fine. I needed it to cover payroll for a month. You make 6 figures a year now, Alex. What's 15 grand to you? I couldn't speak for a second. The sheer audacity was staggering. That money wasn't just mine. It belongs to my employees. My company. It's not some piggy bank you can raid whenever you feel like it. Oh, please, she scoffed. You think your little startup is some kind of empire? You wouldn't even have that money if it weren't for Dad's connections back in the day. I turned slowly to my father. You gave her access to my account. He didn't even look guilty. Not even a little bit. It's all in the family, Alex. Stop being so selfish. You wouldn't even notice it missing. I already froze the account, I said quietly, calmly. And I filed a fraud report with the bank. The room went completely silent. You could hear every breath. Mom gasped, her hand flying her chest. You what? I filed a fraud report. I repeated slowly, clearly. It's already under review by the bank's fraud department. Dad stood up, his face turning bright red. Do you have any idea what you just done? That could ruin your sister's entire business. Good, I said simply. Maybe it's time she learned what consequences actually feel like. Mom's voice cracked, tears filling her eyes. Alex, please. You're going to tear this family apart. I laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh. You already did that. Years ago. I turned to leave, but Veronica suddenly stood up, her face twisted with pure rage. You think you're so perfect now? You think that stupid little app makes you better than all of us? No, I said calmly, looking her straight in the eye. I think it proves you don't need $1 million handout to build something real. You just need to actually work for it. She grabbed a glass from the coffee table and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall right next to me, glass exploding everywhere. My mother screamed. My father shouted her name. But I just stood there, completely still, unmoving. That's the difference between us, Veronica, I said quietly. You destroy things when you don't get your way. I build. Then I walked out without looking back. That night, I stayed awake in my apartment, watching the city lights flicker and glow below my window. I thought about every single moment that had led to this point. The years of neglect. The insults disguised as helpful advice. The way they convinced me, really convinced me, that I was worthless unless I was exactly like her. But that night, I finally stopped being their scapegoat, their punching bag, their backup plan. The next morning, I got a call from my bank. The fraud report had triggered an automatic freeze on all joint family accounts linked to mine. That included my parents' accounts, their mortgage payments, their credit cards, everything connected. Within hours, my phone absolutely exploded with calls and messages. Mom, Dad, Veronica, dozens of missed calls, voicemails ranging from tearful begging to furious, threatening rants. I didn't answer a single one. Later that evening, Mom sent me a long, desperate text. Alex, this has gone way too far. Your father is furious, and Veronica's business account is completely frozen. She can't pay her employees. You've humiliated this entire family. Please call me back. Then another message came through minutes later. Your father says if you don't fix this immediately, you're no longer welcome in this house. Ever. I read both messages carefully. Then I powered off my phone completely. And for the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't guilt or anger or pain. I felt peace. Pure, beautiful peace. But peace doesn't last long when you're dealing with people like my family. Because a few days later, I received an official letter in the mail from a law firm. It was a formal demand letter from my parents' attorney, claiming that I had illegally restricted access to joint family funds and demanding immediate restitution. They were threatening to take me to court for breach of fiduciary duty. It was absolutely absurd, legally baseless. But it also told me one very important thing. They weren't going to stop. They didn't just want money. They wanted control, power over me. And if they couldn't gild it out of me, they were going to try to scare it out of me. That was the exact moment I realized the full truth of the situation. This wasn't just about Veronica's failing business anymore. It was about power. My parents couldn't stand the fact that I had built something real without them, that I'd broken free of their control, and now they were desperately trying to drag me back under their thumb. But they had absolutely no idea that by crossing that line, by stealing from me, they'd set something in motion they couldn't possibly take back. Because for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't afraid to fight back. I wasn't afraid to stand my ground. And the next move? That was going to be mine. All mine. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. The legal letter hit me harder than I expected at first. It wasn't that I thought they could actually win in court. I knew they couldn't. Every single dollar in my company had been earned cleanly, documented properly, and legally separated from anything tied to my family years ago. But the fact that they'd gone this far, that my own parents had actually hired a lawyer to threaten me, that shattered something in me I didn't even realize was still there, still vulnerable. For a few days, I felt completely hollow inside. I stopped checking my emails. I skipped important meetings. I ignored calls from my assistant. My apartment, once quiet and peaceful, now felt like a cage closing in on me. I'd built everything from nothing, from sleeping in my car to running a successful company. And yet, the moment I thought I was finally free, they reached out with their claws and dragged me back into their toxic storm. I'd always told myself that distance was protection, that as long as I stayed focused on my work, I'd be untouchable, safe. But now they'd crossed into my world, invaded the one place I thought was sacred and safe. My lawyer, Marcus, sat across from me in the conference room, flipping through the demand letter with a mix of confusion and complete disbelief. "This is absolutely ridiculous," he said finally, shaking his head. "They're claiming joint family ownership over your entire business?" I nodded quietly, feeling exhausted. He frowned deeply. "Based on what exactly?" "I've personally gone through all your corporate filings. You're the sole shareholder. Your parents have zero legal stake in anything you've built." "They don't need an actual stake," I said quietly. "They just need noise, drama, chaos, something to make me react and bend to their will." He leaned back in his chair. "So what do you want to do about this?" I hesitated for a long moment. "Nothing," I said finally. "Not yet. Not right now." Because I knew my parents better than anyone. I knew exactly how they operated. They'd expect me to fight back immediately, to send angry letters back and forth, to defend myself desperately, to feed right into the conflict like I always used to. That's how it had always worked between us. They'd throw chaos and confusion at me, and I'd exhaust myself trying to make sense of it, trying to fix it, trying to prove myself. But not this time. Not anymore. Instead, I waited. I watched. I prepared. For the next few weeks, I went through the motions of my daily life, but everything felt so much heavier than before. My appetite completely disappeared. My focus kept slipping away. Even my employees started noticing something was wrong. One of them, a quiet, talented developer named Maya, asked me one morning if I was okay. "You've been different lately," she said gently, concern in her eyes. I forced a smile. "Just some family stuff. Nothing to worry about." She nodded like she understood, but she couldn't possibly. Nobody could truly understand what this felt like. At night, I'd sit by my window, staring out at the dark ocean in the distance, wondering how things had turned so incredibly dark and twisted. The sound of the waves used to calm me down, used to make me feel small in a good way, like my problems were just tiny ripples compared to the vastness of the world. But now, the sound just reminded me how far I'd drifted from anything resembling home or family. Still, I kept showing up every single day. I kept working, because if there was one thing I'd learned since leaving the house all those years ago, it was this simple truth. You don't stop moving forward, even when you're falling apart inside. You keep going. You survive. The lawsuit never actually materialized. Not yet, anyway. But my parents' lawyer sent 2 more threatening letters, each one more aggressive than the last, each one trying harder to intimidate me. Then the gossip started spreading like wildfire through the family. Distant relatives started calling to say they'd heard terrible things about me. An aunt claimed my company was under federal investigation for fraud. A cousin texted me a screenshot of a Facebook post Veronica had written. "Sometimes success goes to people who don't actually deserve it. Some of us work hard for what we have. Others just steal and lie their way to the top." The comments section was flooded with sympathy for her. "You're so strong, Ronnie. Ignore the haters. Family can be so cruel and jealous sometimes." And every like, every share, every single word of pity directed at her felt like another deep cut into my soul. But I stayed silent. I refused to engage. I refused to defend myself publicly. Until one day, silence wasn't enough anymore. Because while I was sitting alone in my office late one night, working through financial reports, my phone suddenly buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it completely, but something deep inside told me to answer. "Hello," I said cautiously. There was a long pause, then a low, nervous voice. Is this Alex? Yes. Who's this? This is Brian. I used to work for your sister at her boutique. I sat up straighter immediately, my heart racing. Okay, what's going on? He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Look, I don't want any trouble, man. I really don't. But I thought you should know something important. She's been using your name on official paperwork, investor proposals, loan applications. She's been telling people you're a co-signer on everything. My blood ran ice cold. Are you absolutely sure about that? Positive, he said firmly. That's actually why I quit. Things got really sketchy, really fast. The company's bleeding money like crazy. She's desperate. She told people that her brother's successful company could bail her out if any bank started asking difficult questions. I figured you'd want to know the truth. I thanked him, hung up the phone, and sat in complete silence for a very long time, my mind racing. Then I called Marcus immediately. By the next morning, we'd pulled every single record we could possibly find. Business registrations, loan filings, contracts, everything. And there it was, as clear as day. A falsified cosigner document with my signature forged on it. Veronica had used my name, my reputation, my credit to secure a $200,000 loan for her failing boutique. I wasn't even angry at first. Not immediately. I was just completely numb. Because this wasn't just manipulation anymore. This wasn't just family drama. This was actual fraud. A serious crime. When I told my parents about it, their reaction wasn't shock or outrage like you'd expect. It was pure defensiveness. Complete denial. She didn't mean any harm by it. Mom said, her voice shaking. She just needed help. You know how desperate she's been. She forged my signature. I said slowly, clearly, letting each word sink in. That's a felony. That's a serious crime. Dad's voice was cold, hard, controlled. You're not really going to press charges against your own sister, are you? Over money. She committed fraud, I said firmly. She's family, he shouted, his voice breaking. You don't drag family through the mud over money, Alex. You just don't. And there was again, that cursed word, family. The word they weaponized whenever they wanted to excuse anything and everything. The word they used to control me, to guilt me, to manipulate me into silence. I hung up without saying another word. For a few long, agonizing days, I genuinely didn't know what to do. My lawyer told me very clearly that I had more than enough evidence to press criminal charges. The case was solid, but part of me, some naive, aching, desperate part, still hesitated. Because no matter how much they'd hurt me, no matter how much damage they'd caused, they were still technically my family, my blood. But then I thought back to that cold night 5 years ago, about the duffel bag slung over my shoulder, about sleeping in the back seat of my car, about the freezing ocean air and the crushing loneliness, about the way my father had said, so casually, so cruelly, "You're just wasting space here, Alex." And I realized something profound, something liberating. They'd never hesitated to ruin me. They'd never thought twice about destroying my confidence, my self-worth, my future. So why should I hesitate now? Why should I protect people who never protected me? So I filed the official report with the police. The investigation moved faster than I ever expected. Veronica was called in for formal questioning. The loan officers confirmed that the signature didn't match mine. Within 1 week, all her business accounts were completely frozen. And that's when the messages started absolutely flooding in again. This time, not from my parents, from Veronica herself. At first, the messages were furious, venomous, hateful. You think you're better than me? You've always been pathetically jealous of me. You just ruined my entire life, Alex. I hope you're happy now. Then, slowly, desperately, the messages changed tone completely. They turned pleading, broken. Please. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed help and didn't know what else to do. Mom and Dad said you'd understand. They said you'd fix everything. Please don't let them take everything from me. Please, Alex. I'm begging you. I didn't respond to a single message. Not one. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was just completely, utterly done. Finished. Free. The police didn't end up arresting her. First-time offender. Cooperation with the investigation. Restitution plan worked out. But the damage was already done, irreversible and complete. Her business went completely under within just a few months. The million-dollar luxury boutique became an empty storefront with faded gold lettering on the windows and a sad for lease sign hanging crooked in the door. My parents didn't speak to me at all for months after that. Total silence. But word spread through the entire extended family like absolute wildfire. Alex destroyed his own sister. He took things way too far. He forgot where he came from. He's heartless. But I didn't care anymore. I genuinely didn't. Because somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, all that pain, all that drama, I found something I didn't even realize I'd lost along the way. My peace. My center. My sense of self. I started running again every morning, something I hadn't done in years. Every single morning before work, I'd jog along the beach with my headphones in, watching the sun slowly crawl over the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors. I rented a small, beautiful office space right by the water where I could hear the gentle waves while I worked. My company continued growing steadily, quietly, without any noise or drama or chaos. I stopped trying to prove anything to anyone. I just existed. I just built. I just lived. Until one morning, several months later, I got an unexpected email from a real estate agency. My offer on a stunning beachfront villa had been accepted. Approved. It wasn't about showing off or proving anything to anyone. It was about closing a circle that had been open for far too long. I'd lived in my beaten-down car parked by that exact same beach years ago, cold and hungry and scared. Now I owned a gorgeous home overlooking those same waves. I stood in the empty, sunlit living room that first night after closing, the cool ocean breeze spilling through the open windows, and I thought about absolutely everything I'd lost and everything I'd somehow managed to gain. For the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like I was running away from my family anymore. I felt like I was finally, truly standing on my own solid ground. But life, as it always does, has a cruel way of making sure the past doesn't stay buried forever. Because just when I thought I'd finally moved on, when I genuinely believed the story was completely over, I saw a familiar silver car pull up slowly outside my beautiful new villa. My parents stepped out first, looking older and smaller than I remembered. And then, behind them, moving slowly, hesitantly, was Veronica. And from the desperate look on all their faces, I could tell immediately. The storm wasn't over yet. Not even close. I remember standing on the balcony of my villa, barefoot, warm coffee mug in my hands, when I saw their car approaching. That silver Lexus I'd seen parked outside my parents' house countless times over the years. Now it was creeping along my street like it didn't want to be noticed. It stopped just past my driveway, idling nervously for a long moment before slowly pulling in. My chest immediately tightened with tension. I hadn't seen any of them since everything had completely fallen apart. Not after the fraud report. Not after the investigation. Not after everything. A part of me had genuinely hoped they'd just move on with their lives. That maybe silence would be the cleanest, healthiest ending we could possibly get. But here they were, my parents and Veronica. Stepping out of the car like this was just another casual, polite family visit. Veronica wore oversized designer sunglasses and an expensive beige coat that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Mom clutched her leather purse with that same self-righteous tightness she'd always had before delivering a serious guilt trip. Dad walked a step ahead of them, his hand resting protectively, possessively on Veronica's shoulder, like she was still the fragile little angel who could never do anything wrong. I didn't move from my spot. I just stood there, sipping my coffee slowly, watching them, waiting. When they finally reached my front gate, Mom called out first, her voice bright and fake. "Alex," she said cheerfully, like she was greeting an old friend she hadn't seen in years. "You look absolutely wonderful, sweetheart. This place is so beautiful." I didn't answer. I just stared down at them. Dad followed up, his voice firm, but trying to sound friendly. "We were just in the area, thought we'd stop by. You know, see how you've been doing. It's been too long." I set my coffee mug down carefully on the balcony railing. "You drove 3 hours just to see how I've been doing?" I said flatly. He hesitated for just a second, then smiled tightly. "You know your mother worries about you constantly. And, well, it really has been far too long since we all talked. Veronica finally spoke, her voice soft, carefully rehearsed, practiced. Hi, Alex. I looked down at her, my face completely neutral. Hi. There was heavy silence. The waves crashed rhythmically behind me in the distance. Finally, Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Can we please come inside? It's getting a bit chilly out here. I considered saying no. I really did. But something deep inside me wanted to hear what they actually had to say. What excuse they'd come up with this time. Inside my villa, the air was thick and awkward. Uncomfortable. They sat carefully on my white leather couch like guests who absolutely didn't belong there, didn't fit in this space. They kept glancing around nervously at the polished marble floors, the stunning open view of the beach, the expensive minimalist decor, the kind of space that silently screamed, I built this life entirely by myself. Mom's smile way too wide, way too fake. You've really done so incredibly well for yourself, Alex. We're genuinely proud of you. That word again. Proud. It didn't sound like actual pride. It sounded like an obligation, like something she thought she was supposed to say in this situation. I leaned casually against my kitchen counter, arms crossed. So what is this really about? Dad sighed deeply, like I was being difficult on purpose. It's not about dwelling on the past, son. We've all made our share of mistakes. What really matters now is family. Moving forward together. Don't, I said sharply, cutting him off. Don't use that word again. Not in my house. Veronica looked up at me, her voice shaky and vulnerable. Alex, I'm truly sorry for everything that happened. For the money. For the lies. For all of it. I didn't know what else to do. I was desperate. Her tone almost sounded genuine this time. Almost convincing. I stayed completely quiet, just watching her performance. She slowly took off her expensive sunglasses, revealing tired, red, puffy eyes. Eyes that looked genuinely desperate. I lost absolutely everything, Alex, she said softly, her voice breaking slightly. The boutique. The house. My car. My entire savings. The bank took what little I had left. I'm actually staying with Mom and Dad now in their tiny apartment. I nodded slowly, waiting for the real ask. The real reason they'd driven 3 hours. She hesitated, swallowing hard. And I need help. Just a little guidance. Not money, I swear. Just advice. I know you're incredible at this whole business thing now. I was hoping maybe we could possibly partner on something new together. I've actually been working on this really exciting idea, and I actually laughed out loud. I didn't mean to. It just burst out of me. You forged my signature on legal documents. You nearly got me investigated for fraud. You could have destroyed everything I built. And now you seriously want to go into business with me? Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. Please, Alex. I'm not asking for a handout this time. I swear. I just need one more chance. Just one. Dad leaned forward intensely, his voice growing harder. Son, she's learned her lesson the hard way. We all have. This family has been through more than enough pain. Why don't you show just a little bit of compassion and forgiveness? I stared directly at him, that familiar wave of complete disbelief washing over me all over again. He still didn't get it. After everything, after all the pain and betrayal, none of them understood anything. Mom tried desperately to soften her approach, her voice sweet and manipulative. Alex, sweetheart, your sister has lost absolutely everything. You have the means to help her rebuild her life. Just think of it as finally healing this broken family. I looked directly at Veronica, studying her face carefully. You still think life is just about figuring out who you can use next, don't you? Her entire expression hardened instantly. The tears stopped like someone had flipped a switch. That's not fair at all, Alex. Oh, it's completely fair, I said calmly. You didn't come here for forgiveness or reconciliation. You came here because you need something from me. Again, just like always. Heavy, loaded silence filled the room. That was the exact moment I realized with crystal clarity that they weren't here out of genuine guilt or a desire for reconciliation. They were here because they desperately needed me again. Needed my money, my connections, my success. And they'd clearly rehearsed this pathetic little performance all the way down the coast in that car. But what they absolutely didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine or guess, was that over the past several months, I'd built something far, far beyond what any of them had imagined possible. After Veronica's fraud case became public knowledge, my company had caught the serious attention of several major investors who genuinely admired how professionally and cleanly I'd handled such a difficult situation. One of them, an older, experienced venture capitalist named Robert Hayes, had become something of a mentor and advisor to me. He'd helped me structure my entire company far more professionally and strategically. New subsidiaries, holding companies, comprehensive asset protection strategies. He taught me invaluable lessons about how to move quietly in the business world, how to protect everything I'd built from people exactly like my family. And one of the many assets I'd recently acquired through a strategic business partnership was a commercial real estate investment group, a group that managed, among many other valuable properties, high-end retail properties all along the coast, including, ironically, poetically, the exact building that used to house Veronica's failed luxury boutique. I genuinely hadn't planned it that way. It wasn't some elaborate revenge scheme. It was simply part of a bulk acquisition deal. But when I saw that address on the property list, I couldn't help but notice the absolutely beautiful irony of it all. Now, sitting here in my living room, watching Veronica desperately ask me for help again, begging me to save her one more time, something finally clicked into place in my mind. A plan. A perfect, poetic plan. I smiled slightly. You mentioned you've been working on a new business idea? Veronica's face immediately brightened with desperate hope. Yes, exactly. It's another boutique concept, but this time it's way more sustainable and trendy. Eco-friendly luxury goods, organic fabrics, handcrafted artisan candles, minimal waste packaging. It's extremely on trend right now. Very marketable. I nodded slowly, pretending to genuinely consider her pitch. Sound potentially interesting. Where exactly were you planning to set up this new boutique? She shrugged casually. Maybe back in my old location downtown? I checked recently, and it's still sitting empty. Perfect location. Great foot traffic. It would be absolutely perfect. I tilted my head slightly, studying her face. You're absolutely sure about wanting that specific location? Her eyes flickered with uncertainty for just a second. Why? Is there a problem? I smiled faintly calmly. Because I actually bought that entire building about 3 months ago. It's mine now. Her mouth opened slightly in shock, but absolutely no sound came out at first. My parents immediately exchanged worried, confused glances. I didn't know that, she stammered quietly. Of course you didn't, I replied smoothly. You never keep track of anything that doesn't directly benefit you or belong to you. Dad leaned forward aggressively, his voice rising. Alex, what exactly are you getting at here? I'm simply saying, I said completely calmly. If you want to start your precious new business in that location again, you'll need to go through my property leasing company. Submit a formal application. Go through the approval process. And trust me, the commercial rent isn't anywhere close to what it used to be. Market rates have gone up significantly. Veronica's jaw visibly tightened, her face flushing red. That's incredibly cruel, Alex. No, I said firmly. That's just business. Pure business. Mom's voice actually shook with emotion. You can't possibly do this to your own sister. You can't. I can, I said simply. And I already have. It's done. The silence that followed those words was absolutely the sweetest sound I'd ever heard in my entire life. Veronica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against my floor. You think this makes you powerful, don't you? She said, her voice shaking with rage. You think punishing me over and over makes you some kind of better person? I stood up too, calmly meeting her furious glare without flinching. No, Veronica, I think it finally makes me free. Completely free from all of you. She stared at me intensely for one long, heavy moment before suddenly storming toward the door and slamming it violently behind her, making the entire frame shake. Dad immediately followed her out, muttering something bitter under his breath about ungrateful, heartless children. Mom lingered behind for just a moment longer, standing in my beautiful living room, looking at me with genuine tears streaming down her weathered face. "You've changed so much, Alex," she whispered brokenly. "You're not the sweet boy I raised anymore." I nodded slowly, accepting that assessment completely. "You're absolutely right, Mom. I have changed. And you know what? I'm genuinely grateful for it." When the door finally closed behind her, when I was alone again in my peaceful space, I sat back down on my couch and let out a long, deep breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding in my chest. My hand was shaking slightly, but it wasn't over. Not even close. Over the next several weeks, something strange and unexpected started happening throughout the local business community. News spread quickly that Veronica was desperately trying to open yet another new business, trying to make another comeback. But suddenly, mysteriously, absolutely no one would lease commercial space to her. Not a single property owner. Word of her fraud case, her financial disasters, her reputation had circulated widely among local property owners and business networks. Her reputation was completely destroyed. Toxic. Then one quiet morning, I received an email directly from her. Short, desperate, broken. "Alex, I honestly don't know what you've been telling people in the business community, but literally no one will rent to me anymore. Every single landlord says exactly the same thing. We heard about your past legal issues. I'm begging you now, please stop whatever you're doing. I can't even open a basic bank account anymore because of my credit. Please. V." I read that email 3 times, and then I deleted it without responding. Without a single word back. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to do anything at all. The truth, the simple, factual truth about what she'd done, had done all the work for me. Her own actions had destroyed her, not me. And yet, strangely, I didn't feel triumphant about it. I didn't feel satisfied or victorious. What I genuinely felt deep in my core was clarity. Pure, peaceful clarity. They'd spent literal years controlling me, dismissing me, taking from me, using me, breaking me down. And now, without me even lifting a finger to hurt them, without me actively doing anything vengeful, I'd taken back something they could never, ever reclaim from me. Their illusion of power and control over my life. I spent the next several months completely focused on my work again. My company successfully expanded into 3 new countries across Europe and Asia. My investment portfolio grew substantially and strategically. My reputation in the international business world solidified and strengthened. I was invited to speak at a major conference on resilience and innovation in entrepreneurship, something that would have made my father proud once upon a time in another life. And then one afternoon, completely out of nowhere, I received an official letter, not from my parents this time, not for Veronica, but from my family's longtime attorney. It wasn't a threat this time. It wasn't a demand. It was an invitation, a proposal. My parents were selling their family home, the same house they'd kicked me out of all those years ago, and they wanted me to seriously consider buying it. To keep in the family, they said, to preserve the family legacy. I almost laughed out loud when I read those words. I actually did laugh. The house that had once been their throne, their symbol of absolute control and power over me, was now something they desperately wanted me to preserve for them, to save. I called Marcus, my lawyer, immediately. "Buy it," I said simply, firmly. "All cash. Full asking price. Close as fast as possible." Within just 2 weeks, the deed was officially in my name. Recorded. Legal. Done. But I didn't move into that house. I didn't even visit it once. Not once. I had the entire property professionally appraised, thoroughly cleaned, and then quietly listed it for sale again on the open market. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about closure. Final, complete closure. But when my parents finally found out, when they realized I'd bought their beloved family house just to immediately sell it to complete strangers, they finally reached out to me again one last time. Not through lawyers this time. Not through formal letters. Through Veronica. She showed up at my villa one evening, trembling visibly, her eyes red and swollen from hours of crying. "They're losing absolutely everything, Alex," she said quietly, her voice hollow and broken. "Mom and Dad can't afford the rent on their new tiny apartment anymore. They're genuinely scared. Terrified, I stared at her for a long moment, studying her face. And what exactly do you want me to do about that, Veronica? Her voice cracked completely. I don't know anymore. Maybe just talk to them? Please? Just talk. I didn't answer right away. I stood there in my doorway, really thinking about it. Because part of me, some deep part, wanted to just say no, to shut the door firmly in her face and never, ever look back, to finally be free. But another part of me, some small, tired fragment that still remembered who I used to be before all this pain, wanted to see it, wanted to see how far they'd actually fallen, wanted to witness the end of their story. So I finally agreed. Tomorrow, I said quietly. Tell them I'll come by their place tomorrow afternoon. And that's exactly how I found myself the very next day, standing once again in front of the house I'd grown up in. Except this time, it wasn't their house anymore. It wasn't their kingdom. It was mine. Every single nail, every board, every inch of it. Completely, legally, irrevocably mine. When I pulled into that familiar driveway the next afternoon, the house looked so much smaller than I remembered from my childhood. The paint was chipped and peeling. The porch light hung at a crooked angle. And the yard, once meticulously maintained by my perfectionist father, was completely overrun with weeds and neglect. It didn't look like the proud home I'd grown up in anymore. It looked like a hollow shell, emptied out by years of pride and arrogance that used to fill every room. I parked my car, stepped out slowly, and for a long moment I just stood there, staring at that front door. The exact same door I'd walked through thousands of times as a child. The same door they'd slammed shut behind me when I left at 24 with nothing but a duffel bag and nowhere to go. Now was mine. Every memory, every pain, every inch, all mine. Veronica was waiting nervously by the door when I arrived. She looked so much smaller now, less polished, more human, more broken. The expensive designer coat was gone, replaced with an oversized, worn sweater and old sneakers. Her hair was tied back messily. Her face was pale and drawn. When she saw me approaching, she smiled weakly, almost apologetically. "They're inside," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded once and followed her in. The smell hit me first. Dust, stale air, and something faintly sour and unpleasant. My mother sat hunched on the old couch, clutching a cup of cold tea she clearly wasn't drinking. My father sat stiffly beside her, shoulders slumped forward, staring blankly at the floor like he'd been doing that for hours. They both looked so much older, so much smaller, so much weaker than the last time I'd seen them. The arrogance was completely gone now. The certainty, the power, all that remained was exhaustion and defeat. Mom looked up first when I entered. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. "Alex," she said softly, almost whispering. "Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it." I stood in the doorway, saying absolutely nothing, just observing. Dad tried to smile, but it came out wrong. "Broken. You've done so well for yourself, son. We've heard so many good things. About the company, the villa, the success." His voice cracked painfully on that last word. "Why am I here?" I asked quietly, directly, cutting through the pretense. Mom carefully set her cup down on the table, her hands shaking slightly. "We're selling the house, Alex. We simply can't afford the upkeep anymore. Your father's retirement funds are all tied up in bad investments. And we were genuinely hoping maybe you'd help us buy it. Keep it in the family where it belongs." I took a slow, deep breath. "I already did buy it," I said calmly, clearly. The silence that followed was absolutely suffocating. You could feel the air leave the room. Dad frowned deeply, confusion spreading across his face. What are you talking about?" "I bought the house 2 weeks ago," I said calmly. "Didn't your attorney tell you that?" Mom's mouth fell open slightly, her face going pale. "You bought it? Our house?" "Yes," I said simply. "It's mine now. Legally. Completely mine." Dad stood up suddenly, anger flashing in his tired eyes for the first time in this conversation. You can't just, you have no right." "I can," I said firmly. And I did. "It's done." He stared at me in complete disbelief. "You think this is funny somehow? Buying your own parents' house right out from under them while they're struggling?" "No," I said quietly. "I think it's poetic. Perfectly poetic. Mom began to cry, her body shaking. Alex, please. Please don't do this. We've made so many mistakes, yes. But this isn't right. This isn't who you are. We're your family. I took one more deep breath, letting her words hang in the air. You stopped being my family the exact day you told me I was wasting space in your house. The day you chose her over me without hesitation. The day you stole from me, lied about me, and made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere in this world. Veronica stood frozen against the wall, her eyes wide, darting frantically between all of us. Dad's voice shook with barely controlled rage. So what now, Alex? You're actually going to throw us out onto the street? You think that makes you a man somehow? I looked at him for a very long time. Really looked at him. Saw him clearly for the first time in my entire life. No, Dad, I said quietly. I think surviving you is what made me a man. Building something real despite you is what made me strong. He physically flinched, but he said absolutely nothing back. Mom reached desperately for my hand, but I stepped back deliberately, putting distance between us. You don't have to do this, sweetheart, she whispered desperately. We can start over. All of us. We can heal together. We can. I cut her off firmly. You had literal years to start over, Mom. I begged you for a chance back then. I asked for basic respect. Not money. Not favors. Just respect. Just to be seen. To be treated like I mattered, even a little bit. You gave me nothing but silence and disappointment. You gave her everything I ever needed. Veronica finally spoke up, her voice trembling badly. Alex, please. They've lost everything now. Don't make this even worse than it already is. I turned slowly to face her directly. You forged my signature on legal documents, Veronica. You almost destroyed everything I'd built from nothing. And now you seriously want me to fix your mess again? You've never learned anything. You never will. Tears filled her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. I said I was sorry. I meant it. I know you did, I said sadly. But sorry doesn't undo years and years of damage and pain. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't fix what you all broke inside me. For a long, heavy moment, absolutely none of us spoke. The only sound in that entire house was the faint hum of the old refrigerator and the slow ticking of a clock somewhere in the dark kitchen. It felt like time itself was holding its breath, waiting. Then I pulled a folder from inside my jacket and set it carefully on the table in front of them. These are the official sale documents, I said calmly. The house will be listed on the market next week. You have exactly 30 days to move out completely. Mom gasped audibly, her hand flying her mouth. Ethan, no. Please, no. I shook my head slowly. I'm not doing this to hurt you anymore. I'm doing this to end it. To finally stop pretending there's anything left here worth saving between us. Dad's jaw clenched hard. You actually think you're the victim in all this? You wouldn't even be standing here today if we hadn't pushed you out. If we hadn't forced you to grow up. I looked him dead in the eyes. Then maybe you should have pushed even harder back then, Dad. I might have gotten here so much sooner. Found my strength sooner. Found myself sooner. He didn't have any response to that. Nothing. Mom sobbed quietly into her trembling hands. Veronica just stood there completely motionless, silent tears sliding steadily down her pale cheeks. I walked slowly toward the front door, my footsteps echoing loudly in that nearly empty house. When I reached it, I turned back one final time. One last look. You taught me that family means loyalty, I said clearly. But what you really meant was blind obedience. I spent years breaking myself into pieces, trying desperately to earn your love. Now, I finally understand the truth. I don't need it. I never did. Then I walked out. Outside, the sun was beginning to set beautifully, casting long orange and gold streaks across the overgrown lawn. The same yard I'd mowed as a kid. The same driveway I'd stood on that terrible night when they told me to leave and never come back. I walked down it slowly this time, feeling every single step like it was closing a chapter I've been trapped in for half my entire life. When I finally reached my car, Veronica suddenly followed me out, running after me. Alex, wait, she called desperately, running toward me. Please wait. I turned slowly. She stopped a few feet away from me, breathing hard, her face streaked with tears. You don't have to do this, she said desperately. You could forgive them. You could forgive me. We could fix this. We could be a family again. I looked at her sadly, with genuine sadness this time. You don't actually want forgiveness, Veronica. You want things to go back to exactly the way they were before. You want me to be that quiet, invisible kid who gave everything and expected nothing in return. But that version of me, that version died a very long time ago. She swallowed hard. Then what now? You just drive away and leave us with absolutely nothing? I nodded slowly. Exactly what you all did to me years ago. For just a moment, she looked like she wanted to scream, to fight, to throw something like she always used to when things didn't go her way. But instead, she just stood there, frozen, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I hope someday you understand why I had to do this, I said quietly. Because I already do. I understand perfectly. Then I got into my car and started the engine. In my rearview mirror, I watched her standing there as I slowly drove away. Small, broken, completely silent. For the first time in literal years, I didn't feel anger burning inside me. I didn't feel crushing sadness either. What I felt, what filled my entire chest, was pure freedom. Weeks later, I got the final update from Marcus, my lawyer. The house had sold for nearly double what my parents had originally paid for it decades ago. I didn't keep a single cent of the profit, not $1. I had the entire proceeds quietly donated to a scholarship fund for kids who'd grown up with nothing. Kids who'd been told by their own families, just like I once was, that they'd never make it, that they'd never amount to anything. The news of the sale eventually reached my parents through Veronica. She sent me one last message. Just one. They're moving into a tiny apartment in the bad part of the city. Mom cries every single day. Dad doesn't talk anymore. He just sits. I really hope you're happy now with what you've done. I read that message once. Just once. And then I deleted it forever. Because happiness was never the point of any of this. Peace was. Real, lasting peace. Months later, standing on the balcony of my beautiful villa again, I watched the endless ocean stretch out toward the horizon. The exact same view I used to stare at from my cramped car window all those years ago, hungry and tired and invisible and scared. Now was mine, not because of revenge, not because of anger or bitterness, but because I'd finally stopped chasing people who never, ever wanted to see me actually win. I thought about calling them one last time, thought about saying something, anything, some final words. But then I realized with complete clarity that there was absolutely nothing left to say. They had chosen their story, their version of events. I had chosen mine. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply silence. It's peace. It's freedom. I finished my coffee slowly, walked back inside my home, and gently closed the balcony doors behind me. That was the very last time I ever looked back.